Going to call this meeting to order. It's official because we have a gavel. So, welcome tonight, everybody, to the Board of Park Commissioners special meeting on Monday, August 22nd, 2022. Tonight's discussion is going to focus around issues regarding the future of pickleball, the future of tennis in our park system, and there's been a lot of discussion leading up to this. And listen, we find ourselves in a pickle. Yeah. All right. Wow. Listen, folks, yeah, that was my first spirited joke tonight, but it's my bread and butter, so I'm going to keep the pickle things going. That one fell flat. Oh, man, I'm crashing already. Got to keep it going. Okay. Anyway, well, back onto it. Just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for being here in your evening. It's incredibly important to hear from people in the city, the users of these park assets, and that's why I'm so glad we were able to have this special meeting, and I am very grateful that everybody who came to show up, who came up to speak, who came up to ask questions and really give feedback, and ultimately we're going to build a better city by building a more responsive park system, and we're going to have a solution that hopefully works for the most people and can move us better together. So let's take this first opportunity. Are there any announcements from the board for the good of the body? Seeing none, we are going to move forward with public comment. We will take this opportunity. If there's anybody who would like to speak that is not on the agenda, if anybody is here to speak about anything germane to parks that is not part of our pickleball or tennis agenda, take this time. Doesn't look like there's anybody who wants to speak, so all right, we're going to roll right into our business tonight, and it's going to be comments concerning the future of pickleball and tennis at the courts located at Edgemoor Park. We have quite a few people who have signed up to speak, so I will go down this list, and if somebody, we can take this easy, folks. If you've decided somebody else has spoken and you don't really feel like adding more to it is something that you want to do, that's perfectly fine. We'll try to keep it nice and easy like that. I don't want to cut anybody off. Really want to make certain that everybody gets a chance to say everything they need to say. Please keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes. I'll keep a timer on you. And again, I have this gavel and I have been shown to use it. So that's just be aware. We want to make certain that we give everybody the opportunity to speak and make their voices heard, but we want to do it in a manner that respects everybody's time tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll right into this. And our first speaker on the agenda tonight is Becky Middleton.
Dang, I thought you'd start with Reggie.
I
that's
just
not necessary. I'm prepared.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've been preparing all summer. I've been here. This is my 4th time, so it's good to see you all. And I thank you for having all of us pickleball players here, as well as the tennis people, to try to find a better solution for our parks, because that's at the heart of this situation. And that is what we need to figure it out today, hopefully, so I can maybe have part of a summer. I've been developing pickleball in Wichita for 8 years, and I've picked up some wonderful help on the way. And I need to thank all of the pickleball people for coming out. The support means everything. I usually go it alone, but there's nothing like being surrounded by the love of this community. I started this quest at Edgemoor in 2014. I've had the privilege of working with 3 directors of Parks and Recs, Karen Holmes, Greg Ulmer, and now Troy Houtman. The first thing we got was taped courts inside of Edgemoor in early 2014. Then that spring, I asked for 2 outdoor tennis courts for the conversion to 6 pickleball courts, and I asked for 2 of the lighted ones. At that time, I was told we could have 2 on the unlighted side. I accepted this and went about the task of raising every single dollar that it cost. Never did I think we were entitled to anything. Never did I think I was taking anything from our community. only improving our parks and serving the needs of our community. I was told that if pickleball proved itself, that they'd consider more courts. I was grateful because it seemed fair and equitable. Those first dedicated outdoor pickleball courts were an instant hit and set in motion a synergy like I've never seen before. This is where Lucy Kovalova, Matt Wright, and Jack Oxler learned to play, and play they did and still are. They are the best players in the world. Jack Oxler soon became a pickleball subcontractor and changed the face of pickleball in Wichita forever. He swept in a younger demographic, gave clinics and drills, and put on tournaments. He had it going on, and it never stopped. He did such a great job that Chicken and Pickle hired him away when they had one facility in Kansas City. It is not a coincidence that Wichita got the second Chicken and Pickle. So, on with the story. I recognized the junior courts at Riverside were never used and could not be converted to tennis because of their size. Perfect for pickleball. Once again, I went to the city and asked if I could convert that unused area to pickleball. I got a yes. I went about the task of raising every single dollar that it cost. Never did I think we were entitled to anything. Never did I think I was taking anything from the community, only improving our parks and serving the growing needs of our community. I was told that there would be a possibility of more pickleball if it proved itself. I was grateful because it was fair and equitable. Chris Heck and I dedicated a huge amount of effort in trying to get the city to give us a pickleball director. Pickleball had become unmanageable for just volunteers. We needed help for the ever-growing game. Noy Surenthone came to us finally in March of this year. His love of pickleball and of this community has driven him to guide us beyond all our expectations. He has created programming for our city, drills, lessons, tournaments, leagues. All of this is now taking up the courts of Riverside day and night, creating a new urgency for lighted courts elsewhere. That elsewhere is Edgemoor. Once again, Noy was told that if he proved himself, and that if pickleball continued to prove itself, there would be more from the city. And we're grateful for Noy. Once again, we are asking for 2 lighted tennis courts to be converted to 6 pickleball courts to improve our parks and meet the needs of the community. Never do we think we're entitled. We have raised every single dollar that it costs for this project. We are asking for equity and fairness only. I am not sure what pickleball needs to do to prove itself. It is self-evident in the numbers. It is self-evident in the connection of the community. We improve parks and we bring them back to life. This is the right direction for our parks if you wonder what they'll look like in 100 years. Please tell me what to do to prove pickleball. I'm at a loss. Maybe you'll hear something from our pickleball community today that will behoove you to make the right decision for our community as a whole. Pickleball has been proven.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker, Chris Heck.
Going in order from when we signed in.
That's right. Going in order when you signed in, so.
Should have shown up 10 minutes later.
All good.
All right. So I'm here just to kind of talk about the monetary stuff that goes along with pickleball, and kind of what 6 more courts at Edgemoor would kind of do for the community. I'd say it was about 2 weeks ago, Becky went down to Edgemoor and put it on Facebook, and all 6 courts, all 6 of the pickleball courts were full. All 6 of the tennis courts were also full with pickleball players. So what we're trying to do here is meet the needs of the community. Guys, I'm also a tennis player. I love tennis also, but the community is blowing up with pickleball right now. And as far as making this little park a better place, a more active place where the community is going to be, I think that pickleball might be the best way for this to go. The tennis courts, the tennis fence, the cracks in the court, the tennis community has not come together and petitioned the USTA for any kind of funding to move forward with any of this stuff to get this park to be a very nice tennis facility. Right now, Becky's putting it forward. She wants those 6 courts lit, and she's raised all the money for it. For me, for the city, if those 12 courts are going to be full and free, then it seems to make a lot of sense for me. On top of that, where did this money come from? I believe the Bob Jackson tournament is, I don't know if it's the only source or the major source, but the $27,000 that has been raised from that tournament was done on the 6 courts. If we add the other 6 courts in the 5 years, I can only imagine we'd raise double that. And we could have bigger tournaments. And with this being the city of Wichita, and I know there's Riverside, I know there's a new facility going in down south, but why can't there be one on the east side also? Chicken and Pickle is nonstop booked. I think that with Edgemoor, that can also be a nice park that people can go and continually play down there. And that's about all I have to offer. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Doug High.
Good evening. My name is Doug High, and I'm a lifelong Kansan. I graduated WSU in Business and Economics, and I'm a retired Director of Project Management Office at Textron. I took up pickleball 6 years ago. Most of the people behind me helped me and trained me and were very patient with me. And I've turned around and paid that forward and helped untold number of new pickleball players. I play mainly at Seneca, unless it's wintertime. And then I play at the West Y. And when I travel, I take my pickleball paddle and my ball. I mainly travel to Phoenix for the Royals training, but and played pickleball down there. I'm keenly aware that it takes critical thinking to make critical decisions in the best interest of the community. The issue we address tonight is not about tennis versus pickleball. It's about community and connection, and then the community equals connection. The most recent decade has unveiled a desperate need for a catalyst that brings community together to laugh, play, share, invite, plan, eat, drink, sing, encourage, and rest. There's only one vehicle that I know that fosters all of them and much more. And I personally have experienced this over and over again. It is not a spectator sport. It doesn't just favor a few. It favors everyone. And it is a participation sport. It is still growing, staggering. Ben Johns, arguably the best player today, made this comment. I think everyone that plays pickleball wants to bring their love of pickleball to everybody else. The everybody he is talking about is the community. I'm grateful to the Parks and Recreation and to the board for investing their time and talent in these endeavors. Since we are talking about schools, let's talk about an introduction and subsequent meeting that Dave New led with the incoming and outgoing physical education director for USD 259. Dave's team consisted of 2 teachers, one of which is also a US Open pickleball champion, 3 official USAPA ambassadors of Pickleball Association, and Becky Middleton. The dialogue surrounded the idea of having our team, along with other volunteers, conduct in-service for nearly 200 K through 12 physical education teachers. Pickleball would be taught in 6 breakout sessions. Lesson plans would also be made available to assist teachers after they returned to their classrooms. They learned and played. The in-service evaluations were overwhelming. In their words, the best we've ever had. This was last August. A campaign for equipment is currently underway. Stemming from the USD 259 in-service, the team is currently moving the benchmarks towards the inclusion of pickleball in the Kansas State High School Athletic Association offerings. Much like bowling had several years ago, and more recently, the addition of esports to the high school menu of sports. Pickleball is in the conversation today. The reasons are evident. Anyone can play, and I'm here to prove anyone can play. There isn't a more inclusive support and sport. Pickleball will be taught in USD 259. It will become a competitive sport statewide through the Kansas State High School Athletic Association. There needs to be courts available and ready for this reality. Regarding the community park at Edgemoor, I humbly ask the few be accommodated elsewhere in the city so that the community can be brought together. Thank you for your consideration, your leadership, and applying the critical thinking to this process. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Tim Dolliff.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Tim Dolliff. I'm the athletic director at Classical School, Wichita. I'm fairly new to this whole discussion, so if I say something dumb, it might be because I just don't know. It might just be because I'm dumb. But we just found out about this last week when I think the meeting the video of the meeting was forwarded on to me, and so. Through watching that video and a couple of phone calls, I found out a whole lot more about pickleball than I ever knew before. Certainly impressed with the number of people that are playing here, quality of players that we have in town. Becky, the amount of work she's put in with that, sure impressed with her and what she's put forward with this. We understand there's a demand for pickleball courts. However, I did feel like I needed to show up and at least tell you why the tennis courts at Edgemoor are important to our school and to us. We offer tennis at our school because as a high school activity association member, that's the only racket sport currently available for junior high and high school kids. And so as a KSHA member, that's what we offer because that's what that kids that age can play. The Edgemoor courts are unique for us in that they're centrally located and there's enough courts there to host tournaments and also host our junior high and high school practices at the same time. We have a lot of siblings that ride to practice together. We've reserved those courts and practiced there for the last several years, and we pay to reserve those courts. It's not big money, I know. I think it's about $1,200 or $1,600 a year, which I know is probably a pretty small percentage on the Parks and Rec budget. We have in the spring we have about 40 boys playing tennis, and in the fall we have about 25 girls playing tennis. And so I don't know, I can't speak to courts citywide and usage, but I know for about 6 months of the year, I know those tennis courts are all full for about 2 hours every afternoon because that's where we practice. From watching the meeting from the last time, I was watching there. One solution was maybe to send us to McAdams to practice, and it was brought up that there's not a lot of different travel time, and that's true. According to Google Maps, I think it's about 6 minutes from our school to Edgemoor and about 11 minutes to McAdams. The only difference is for our students to get from our school to Edgemoor, it's 35 miles an hour up Woodlawn, and to McAdams, it's Kellogg and 135. So it'd be quite a bit of difference in speed, what they're driving. When you're talking, I've got a few 16, 17-year-old drivers in my family, and that makes a pretty big difference on them. Two solutions I just would throw out there to consider. One would be, I don't know about if there's any high school teams or colleges or whoever that use the McAdams courts, but it's a possibility to maybe turn 2 of those courts into pickleball courts to alleviate some of the pressure. Another thought I had is possibly, I know one of the problems at Edgemoor is it's not only court space, it's the lights, because once the sun goes down, the pickleball courts are off limits. And so the courts that I think are proposing to convert are lighted. I didn't know if it was a possibility to paint down lines on those to make them kind of a dual use court, where, when we have pickleball tournaments, they could use them for pickleball. When we were there after school for practice, we could use them for tennis practice. And if nothing else, maybe this would buy us some time in the space between now and when the Pickleplex gets built, because it seems like when we add 20 to 30 courts, that might alleviate a lot of the need for one of these courts for tournaments. I think one of our coaches who may speak later has seen this done in other cities, because I know you don't want courts that are hardly usable, but I imagine if we look around, there's places that this has been done and done well. In closing, I'd just like to say it's not our intention to be against pickleball and pickleball getting more courts, and I certainly like pickleball and tennis. I'm equally bad at both of them, but it's, as me, myself, and our school, we're certainly not opposed to pickleball having more courts and lights at their courts, and anything we could do to help, we would do it. But it'd be my hope, as we look around, I know there's a lot of people in this room a lot smarter than me that could maybe come up with a solution that would work with both groups without dislodging a number of high school and junior high kids from the place where they normally practice. Thanks.
Hey, would you stand for a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much for being here. Definitely like to hear from a view that we might not have heard yet. So really do appreciate you taking the opportunity to come here. The question that came to mind for me is just because I do not like the idea of displacing a program that's been in place, especially for students. Has there been some consideration on your part to possibly reach out to some other, to USD 259 about some of their facilities? Possibly the Catholic Diocese of Wichita also has some tennis facilities as well that may be more appropriately. What intersection is the school at?
Woodlawn and Kellogg.
Okay, gotcha. So I would really like to see, while this process is moving forward, to see, are there other alternative organizations along with the park department, but let's say maybe there are some other organizations that want to partner with you and say, hey, we're not using these at this time. I mean, like, that's the fact of the matter. You're going to find, I am certain there are tennis courts in this town that are reasonably located that can be used as an alternative. And I would hope we could try to help facilitate that conversation if maybe you could make some outreach in that way. That was the first thing that came to mind. I don't know if my fellow board members have thoughts on that, but that was...
I do have a few questions for him. I don't know if I should ask now or wait until everyone is done.
Gotcha. What is the typical, I just wanted to make certain we're following the proper order while we don't get too far off track.
Yeah, I don't think there's any requirement, but I think it would also just make sense to ask questions now. He's here.
So I know that you are late to the show on some of this, and I have this lovely little handout that makes it easier for me.
Okay.
Because, quite frankly, I'm not familiar with either one. I'm really bad at it. I hit the ball way too far and then it flies. So it's more of a fetch process for me. So I have had to rely on resources and information being pulled to me. Some information I do have, I know that you mentioned doing a dual purpose, and that also to me sounded like a really great idea until I realized from my little sheet, the tennis courts that would have those lines would be excluded from tournament just because of they can't have like the both sets of lines. There is also concern for it being confusing to players, whether they be pickleball players with extra lines or tennis players with extra lines. I do have 5 nieces and nephews, and the thought of them on Kellogg or, what'd you say, 135 is a little, I understand the concern there. So I don't want you to feel like you're going unheard. I did have, how many courts do you guys use when you practice? You would have 4. Do you need all 6 of those courts when you guys are practicing?
Definitely during the boys' season, we had 40, is that right, Julie? 40 boys out last year? 48 boys out last year, so on 6 courts, that's pretty crowded.
I think that was all of my thoughts and questions for.
Any other questions for our speaker? Definitely appreciate you coming up and speaking. I wanted to say, just from a personal perspective, no matter what happens, I do want to make certain that we're helping transition and find a way, no matter what's decided tonight. Do not want to shut the door on anybody or say that we are not going to work together. This is part of the job. It's sometimes hard to find out a best solution for this, but keep in mind I am sympathetic, and I want to make certain we can try to find some of these conversations. So let's talk separately, no matter what happens tonight. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, coming up next is Julie Keiss. Julie Keiss.
Classical school.
Very good.
Hi.
Hello.
And I can answer some of those questions. One of the questions I would just say, just quickly before I say what I was going to say, is that those other schools are using those courts during their tennis seasons. Like, we would not be very successful in getting anything from 259 during tennis seasons, which is when we have our tennis season. So we haven't been very lucky in getting facilities that way from the public schools to rent when we've tried to, because we have tried to. I would just love to say, first of all, that Edgemoor is an amazing little park. Like, it's what you have going there with the splash pad and the skate park and the basketball and the pickleball and the tennis is just football practice at night. I mean, like, I live nearby. I'm there. I might be the human in Wichita that spends the most time at Edgemoor Park. I'm the coach for the boys varsity team and the girls varsity team. And so I coach there from pretty much February, usually the first day of March until mid-May. And every day I'm there. I play pickleball there most Sundays from about 7:15 to 10. I coach the girls team from about August 15th to mid-October. I'm there before and after practice, usually for a little while, so I'm there big hunks of time. I spend a lot of time there. My daughter takes Taekwondo there. It's a little slice of heaven in the middle of Wichita in the sense of just the communities it brings together and serves. And like, I love that the skate park's there. I love that my kids get to interact with all different kinds of kids as we go to practice. So I'm there a lot, and I just think Edgemoor, when it comes to what we're talking about, the 6 courts is really key to what, when you talk about having a tournament and you need 12 courts for a tournament, it's a special event. And so it's not that necessarily every court has to be full all the time. The same is true. We do use all 6 courts for both of our practice seasons, and it's wonderful. We began 10 years ago, so I started this program with the boys tennis program 10 years ago. We're actually a tiny school. So when you hear that we have 48 boys out for tennis, that's incredibly insane. We might be one of the only 1A tennis programs in the state. Like, our high school has like 100 kids in it. So like, we have like over 15% of our student population out for tennis. So, and I appreciate, like, Becky and I, we're clearly both kingdom builders. Like, we both are like, we love this and we're building something. So we're building. I've told my players for years now they're on the ground floor of what is the beginning of something. And so I understand building. I don't want this to be a pickleball versus tennis thing, because I love those courts. I want the pickleball courts lit, and they absolutely need to be lit. I believe the money that they've raised with the matching money, that they could light the 6 courts that are currently there. That money was, I think, not the matching money, but the original money. I think the original idea was to light the 6 courts that are currently there. So if you lit those and you painted permanent lines on the other, you would have 12 courts. And I guess I'm a little bit, like, I'd love to clarify, because in the last meeting, which I wasn't aware was going to happen, but I was quoted by name. I'm Julie Keiss, and my name was in that presentation. And I was quoted as saying that we didn't want pickleball at Eastview Park. That meeting with Becky happened after the last time this happened, when we didn't know the meeting was happening before it happened. And I reached out after that meeting, and I just said, hey, I want to help you raise money for lights. Like, if you want to light those courts, I'm a good promoter. I will jump in and try to help you. And so that's why I reached out to meet with her. And I know that she's worked super hard, and she has done an amazing job raising money, and that's amazing. She didn't take me up on, I haven't been asked to help promote anything for fundraising for that. But the way Eastview came up, I just wanted to clarify a couple things, because I was quoted as saying, because first I want to say I don't speak for the tennis community in Wichita. Like, I'm not the tennis person to speak about Edgemoor. I coach, I think I make $750 a season coaching kids in a blazing inferno weather because I love it and I love the kids. So, like, I don't have any big, thing that I'm promoting, but I did want to throw my weight behind trying to get lights there, because I wanted to make it work, that we could share the space. And what I said about Eastview, I did not say that the tennis community would be, what I said was, oh, those courts are really well used. Every time I pass those courts on Eastview, there's people using them for tennis. I think they'd be sad to lose them. So there wasn't any big, no, you can't have Eastview. I'm not in charge of that. You guys are in charge of that. So just to clarify that from the last presentation, I don't know, maybe Eastview would love to have pickleball courts. I don't know. I just see a lot of tennis players there. I also would hate to see a lot of courts in McAdams going away, because they use those for outreach in that neighborhood. They have amazing programs. I'd hate to see that. And then I just wanted to say one last thing, is that in the meeting last time, it was stated that morning, noon, and night there are lines for pickleball. And I want to point out that I don't mean this to be combative or anything, but I literally have never seen a line there. Like, I know I'm there at different times. So I'm there at the after school time till about 5:30. And I'm there Sunday morning is a pretty prime time, from like 7:15 in the heat of the summer till about 10:15. And I know there are times that there are lines. I'm not saying there aren't lines. That's not what I promise. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, I have never seen a line there. I see them very busy, and I see them very well used. But when I'm there, there's always a couple courts. I was there this week for 3 hours doing a practice, and they were very well used in the middle of the week in the morning, but there were always 2 courts open. So I guess I just wanted to say, I don't see morning, I left practice to come here, that's why I'm stinky and gross, and there were people getting there. So I just want to clarify that I don't think there are lines at Edgemoor Park at morning, noon, and night. I think that was a little bit of an overstatement, because I'm there a whole lot, and I'm not exaggerating to say that when I'm there are not lines for those courts. So I just my hope would be that there would be a way to figure out, because clearly we're not overlapping. Like, we're there during a different time than the pickleball folks are there. And so my hope would be that we could figure out a way to dual use those courts, because I think a cool pickleball plex is coming that will house the big tournaments that we're talking about. Like, if we're not, isn't that where the big tournaments will be with the Pickleplex? And so is this an in the meantime answer for tournaments? And if it's in the meantime, then maybe they could be shared. So I don't know. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So I was I don't know how many, I think Phil and I were the only park board members here tonight that were at the meeting last year. And I know you shared that, is there an opportunity to share the courts? But Lucia, you brought up a great question earlier about sharing courts. And I remember last year, we heard loud and clear from the tennis community that they didn't want to share the courts, because then you wouldn't be able to host tournaments. So can I ask, is that a feeling that has changed? Or what has been, because last year that was a solution that was presented as well, was repaint pickleball lines on tennis courts. And the sentiment was, you can't do that to the tennis folks, because then you officially can't host tournaments because of the lines.
What the type of the type of hosting that we're doing there, we could host with lines painted there. I don't know who said that. The last time when this came up, we haven't like mounted a really big campaign. Like on the last meeting, it was like, they're really well organized. We're not so well organized. Like we received notice that that was happening. I sent out one email to my people saying, hey, we've been asked to share why these courts are important to us. Send an email if you want to. And that was the most I've rallied troops for this. For the way that we host, we would be able to use, I mean, they do that at Riverside. They have lines. That wouldn't be a problem for what we're doing. Now, I'm not holding like USDA sanctioned, I'm not doing the same thing. So for our purposes, we could have dual lines on them.
Okay.
And again, I understand that we're not the only, I mean, obviously the Classical School Wichita isn't the only reason to make a decision like this. I did just want to clarify that I do not see lines there morning, noon, and night. And I'm there
Sure.
a lot.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I have a question. So, again, going off of my little sheet because I need it. The tennis courts, so I'm just clarifying, for your school and the tournaments and competitions and things that you do there, having them painted both pickleball and tennis would not disqualify you or prevent you from any tournaments. Is that what I'm understanding?
for the type of tournaments that our school hosts there, that's true. I don't know, I can't speak to like a USDA situation because we host probably every season, we host about 4 events for middle school and 2 events for high school on those courts. We also practice on them. I mean, if you have 45 kids with 6 courts, that's a pretty congested practice. But yeah, and the other aspect of that for us is that we have 3 coaches instead of 4. Like McAdams, one of the issues with McAdams, which is just that you can't quite see all the courts all the time. You'd need more coaches there. For us, it'd be a little bit difficult. But yeah, for the way we host, because I'm not holding large high school tournaments there. I'm hosting duels and those sorts of things. Like smaller, like quads, and then middle school tournaments.
So then on this information that I have, it looks like your reservations are typically from 3:45 to 5:15. Is that correct?
That's our practice time.
And how do you go about, and this is again ignorance on my part, how do you go about reserving that or putting in a request?
I just work with Sarah Rasmussen at Riverside handles all those, like those kind of
And how
things.
far out do you have to reserve in order?
We reserve kind of for the year.
The year?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have your tournaments
Like this season,
Pre-arranged?
we have our hosting dates that we have pretty in advance. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate all of that.
Any other questions?
Questions? Thank you very much. All right. Lance Brown? Oh, okay. It's okay. If you would like to, you can, but if not, then. You can do it, Lance. Or, listen, if they're, come on. I was about to defend you. I was going to use the gavel to say, do not bully Lance. But listen.
Now I have to. Good evening. Lance Brown, 6511 West Brookview in Wichita. And when I arrived for support of the pickleball community, I was asked if I wanted to speak, and I just wrote down, yes, I do not know why. I have nothing material to really add. I guess I was going to perhaps thought I would say something from a personal perspective. Haven't done a lot of research like a lot of people here on the pickleball and the tennis side have done, and obviously there's some big decisions, and it's going to kind of be painful for one side or the other, but I think everybody will survive through it. But pickleball, I guess I'd say, as you probably know, it's growing in leaps and bounds. And for me personally, I've been playing about 7 years, and it's just been such a journey for somebody that really didn't do a lot of sports back when they were in like high school. But it's a kind of sport that anybody can play, and you can learn it easily, but it's really hard to master. And I think that quality and aspect of it makes it so appealing and attractive and addictive to people, because what it does is it makes you want to be better, and it makes you want to go out and do something with your time it made me want to make better decisions, health-wise decisions. I mean, I lost weight, I didn't drink as much, I made friends, and I just was very active. And I watched it kind of merge a little bit already in the last 7 years towards younger people too, because I can remember some of the people I first played with, we were all about my age, a little younger maybe, and then younger people started coming in, and at first it's like, hey, they're killing our sport, they're taking all our courts. But what I've seen actually happen is that youth are getting involved, and that's, I think, the future of pickleball. And from the aspect of getting them kids out of their bedrooms and now playing tennis, it's also very qualifying in this regard. But I mean, it's good for their mental health, their physical health, their emotional health. The obesity problem we have in America, we got to get kids moving, and this is just a perfect solution. Anybody can play it. It's so social, and I really just want everybody to play pickleball. I wish everybody had a place to play. And I wish I played tennis too, because I'd probably understand that. I understand that side, that sentiment, but it's just a personal story, it's been good. I spent a lot of time doing it, so that's all.
Thank you.
All right, Alan Peel.
Kind of like Lance, I had not really planned on speaking. I probably look at this, I'm Alan Peel, live here in Wichita. I probably maybe look at this a little differently than some. And when I say that, I have worked with Tim many years on the referee side. I referee soccer and basketball, and I have been fortunate enough to work with Tim, quality school, and I can't say more, and I understand when you don't have your own facilities and the ability to just walk out your door like a lot of the schools around here, it is difficult for them. So my hope is here, I hope we can work together somehow, whatever that solution may be. And then with, kind of just supporting what Becky has to say and Chris, heck, this sport is growing worldwide. And as kind of Lance alluded to from the standpoint of the growth of the support and who is involved, it really is a generational type of sport that most other sports are not. You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to be proficient at this or anything like that. But we have actually seen 3 generations of family play together. We've seen the child, the parent, and the grandchild being able to participate in that sport. Secondly, as an official, I look at, like I said, I look at things a little differently. What I could see also as an impact for the pickleball community from an official standpoint, and also talking about implementing this within the state high school sports program, I could see two different things here. Number one is clinics being brought to Wichita on a regional or national level for training of officials, okay? Pickleball officials. And the other aspect is hopefully 259 will take up this program. We as a generation in sports are very, very short of officials in all sports. You guys are more aware of this. So if that could be brought into the school system and have the access of usage of courts around, that type of thing, we could have clinics for kids, teaching it in schools, teaching it at the parks and that type of thing. And I think we can work together from the standpoint of, again, working with Tim and classical school, and hopefully can really come to a sense of community and togetherness, and hopefully you guys will consider that no matter what that is, but that a resolution can be made and everybody is satisfied, hopefully. So, okay. Any questions or anything?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Chris Dara, did I get that right, or is it Dara? I can't, okay, gotcha.
Hi, I'm Chris Dara. I've lived in Wichita my entire life. I have also coached with Julie at the classical school for the past 10 years, both boys and girls seasons. I want to start out just by saying thank you so much for hearing our side. It was really disappointing when we heard this proposal and didn't even know this was going on. Thank you for taking time tonight. I'm sure there are many things you'd rather be doing, and you're here to hear our side. And I just want to be heard, and I respect you guys to make the decisions that's best for our community, but thank you so much. I also want to say I agree with every single person that's spoken here. I am a tennis player. I play on USTA teams, but I also am a huge lover of pickleball. Go pickleball. I want it to expand. My family plays. I play with friends. I've played in tournaments in the city and a league at Riverside, and I love pickleball. I want to see it grow. It's great for families, all ages. I agree with all of that, 100%. This is just a matter of two organizations that want the same space. So I don't really like to see it tennis versus pickleball. It's just we both want this space. And to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for an established program who's doing great things in our community to be pushed aside. We not only are using the courts 5 to 6 months out of the year, 2 hours a day plus regularly, but we're inviting other schools too. So it's not just our school that's benefiting from the use of the courts. We have Hutch Trinity coming from Hutch. We have Conway Springs coming in. We have Central Christian. We have Collegiate and Independent, other schools coming to compete on these courts too. And you will see on a beautiful day, like all of these courts full and these families gathered watching their kids compete. And it's a wonderful thing for our community. And so I just want to let you know that that's going on, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. I also want to say that through all of the seasons that I've coached, I have not seen a waiting line during the time we use the courts in the afternoon. Yeah, there will be a couple of people sometimes out, sometimes 2 or 3 courts, often no one, but there's never been a line we are not using it during prime pickleball time, and we don't want it during their prime time. It just makes sense to me that we would try to share the space. I just would love to find a way that we could share it. That is all that I would ask. I know it's not ideal to have the lines painted. It's kind of confusing for both sports to have 2 sets of lines. We are willing to make that work. We would do whatever it would take to make that work, if at all possible. My fear is that the courts maybe would be converted to pickleball, and then once they have their pickleplex, they're kind of left there stranded, and then we don't have our practicing facility. So would that be a possibility? I don't know. So those are just some questions that I raise and things I propose. So yes.
1 second. Does anybody have any questions for our speaker?
I just have one.
Oh, please.
I think that's kind of where I was, those that watched the meeting, I kept pushing for this meeting for us to come together because I believe that there was a compromise that we could come to. And the only way to do that is we all are in the same room together. And that's a question that I've had. Can we temporarily share it together until the Pickleplex is built? And then they would have their own facility, and then we could bring it back to tennis courts permanently.
I would plead for that. Absolutely.
And that's been a question that I've had. Can we do that just for the time being until the Pickleplex is completed?
I know we're not here for the Pickleplex, but do we know when that's projected?
2024, I think.
2024.
I have a question for our tennis friends. So I've heard several times from the tennis community that they want to help the pickleball. And I would just pose the question. I don't play this sport because I'm terrible at both. But I would love to understand what actions have been taken to help expand pickleball in Edgemoor Park, because all I've heard is that, and what I've seen is the pickleball community come together to raise the dollars so that they could light the courts. And the reason why they can't light them is because it's a $100,000 price tag. And so I would love, if that is something that the tennis community wants to help, how have you helped, if you've helped?
I know our courts are already lit, so that's a great question. I don't think it's been in our interest to really have to push for that, but I think that's a great question. Would our school maybe be willing to help with the lighting of the courts? That's something to consider.
That was something actually that came to mind to me as well. Just is there some? I mean, I gotta say, I was blown away by the effort that our friends from Pickleball they've had a capital campaign, more or less. They've spent a lot of time raising a lot of money specifically on this issue,
and not just this year.
Yeah. I mean, is there some way that possibly folks from the tennis community can say, hey, this is a shared problem? Absolutely. Can we possibly contribute to helping find a solution that may not be the least expensive, but it'll be the most equitable? Is there some skin in the game that the tennis community is willing to help contribute much in the same way that the pickleball people have? I mean, I don't know if I'm speaking out of school on that one. That just kind of seems like a...
I mean, I would just say that was my response last time that this came up, was to reach out to Becky and tell her. I mean, I don't know that I was in a position where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hold fundraisers for you, but man, if you're having a fundraiser, I'm a good promoter. I'm good at that.
Go ahead.
Well, we don't have to hash out like what was or wasn't helped or what was or wasn't done. It's just a question that I pose. If this is truly something, and you don't have to have the answer, but just maybe something to dwell on,
Right.
is if this is an issue that, this has been a conversation that's been brought up several years now, right? So it isn't something that just happened, but certainly something that I think to consider as we move forward is how the communities can work, how both communities can work together to help address this issue. But I thank you for speaking.
Thank you so much. All right. The next person we have signed up to speak is Matt Mayfield.
Hi guys, my name is Matt Mayfield, and I've been a leader and organizer of a lot of the social events in our Wichita pickleball community that have helped fuel the growth. I organized a really awesome glow-in-the-dark pickleball party at Edgemoor, and it was just to raise awareness about the need for lights at Edgemoor. And my party went viral in the pickleball world, and it has since been replicated in cities across the country. So if you see a pickleball event that's glow-in-the-dark, it was likely inspired by mine. So I am now working full-time in the pickleball space, working for a nationwide tournament tour. I have helped run some of the largest tournaments in states across the country, and my travels have taken me to Arizona, Utah, Nevada, Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and California so far. I have seen pickleball venues be wildly successful and major draws for visitors. Many are repurposed from tennis courts that are being underused. It is hard to ignore the news of pickleball's growth in communities across the United States. Did anybody see SportsCenter yesterday? They were talking about pickleball. It's the first time of many. Many of the industry leaders in pickleball think that it will be the #1 participation sport in the future. I personally believe that every assisted living complex, homeowners association will have permanent pickleball courts as a requirement. The sport is just growing exponentially, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Edgemoor Park needs this project. Our community has been clamoring for it for years. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions? Thank you very much. Next up is Mark Nola.
Hi, my name is Mark Nola, and I'm a pharmacist at the Veterans Hospital. I want to speak and share some of my personal stories with tennis and pickleball. I grew up in the city of Wichita, and one of the sports that really brought me and my family together was tennis, and it's something that we played growing up. And when I got into high school, that's a sport that I played, and playing that for a long period of time, I really enjoyed it, and it was a competitive sport that I grew in. And then I decided to become a teacher. So I worked for East High for 3 years, and I was also the assistant tennis coach for East High. So I want to share some of my experiences there and growing up. Before I got into high school tennis, we were always taught to, if you want something, go get it, and if you need something, you got to earn it and you got to work for it. And so I would ride my bike to local parks and play tennis. Me and my brothers would go, and this is what we did for tennis. And so when we got to high school, some of the experiences of like playing competitive matches, things that I organized as a coach, we'd go to Edgemoor Park, probably for City League tournaments, but we wouldn't use that park. We would use our high school courts, and at East High, they've raised enough funds to expand those courts now that they can be played competitively. So I understand the need for those tennis courts and use, but I also see that those courts are not used, so those courts are used not as often. They mentioned 6 months of the year, they're for boys tennis and girls tennis as well. However, Edgemoor Park is used for tournaments, and we played in the city tournament once, and our coach, even when I was a high school player, they asked us to go to challenge each other at the courts, at local courts. And so if we didn't have enough courts, as a coach, I've drilled my students to get in lines because there was not enough space, and we want to accommodate everyone that wanted to play tennis. And so there were things that we were flexible on as far as practice went, and we just used what we had and what was available to us. As a pickleball player, that transitioning out of that, I've met so many people. It's broken down diversity barriers, age gaps. Some of my friends ask me, I'm posting these stories on my social media, like, hey, who you're hanging out with? You're hanging out with an older crowd, and these are my people now. And they're family to me. I never thought that as a young professional I'd be hanging out with retired people. Like, hey, you retired yet? What are you doing? And so, no, I love these people. They took me in, taught me the sport, and didn't care who I was, what I did, and they allowed me to be part of this community. And oftentimes I find myself just wanting to spend time with them, and it's brought my family together. It's brought younger crowds together. I see families coming together. I see other practitioners, other doctors, residents at our hospital coming in and playing, and I'm like, wow, this is a sport that really transcends so many different things, and it really is a connector. And I'd hate to see, the reason why you don't see people waiting in lines anymore is because a lot of people are tired of waiting an hour in this hot sun and not wanting to wait for a course. And there's now organized a pickleball scheduler that they use now to try to figure out, hey, when are times that they can play or not play, and see what's available. So people aren't waiting in there, they're more organized. I think those are solutions that our community has created to make sure that anyone that wants to play has an opportunity and shouldn't wait. And we've organized rules and regulations, and we work together to say, hey, if you see a line, then make sure you only play an hour. We limit ourselves, and we're willing to work together to create good solutions. I think that's what we're here to do now. And so I just want to encourage, the tennis community, the pickleball community. We all started somewhere, and a lot of us started from tennis. Our professional players, the top 4 players in the world, they started from tennis, and they've made Wichita their home, and they now are the best players in pickleball. And that's what I see a growing need there. We're asking for 2 tennis courts. Each court allows 4 players competitively at a time. So that's, for those 2 courts, you get 8 players. Those 2 courts for pickleball, you see what we've done with those 2 tennis courts. You got 6 courts, take that times 4, 24. So 24 players can be playing at one time versus the 8. And I know that, I'm just making the argument because there's a need. And you can expand that and provide greater community access, and that's what we're hoping to do here. Whether it be my former students playing pickleball now, or my old teachers and students, it's wonderful to see. I think that it really builds and makes Wichita a better community as a whole.
I have a question. You mentioned a pickleball scheduler.
Yes.
So to prevent, I guess, you guys from, because you do have a very large community. I mean, it's very clear. So who is that person, and how does one go about scheduling? And if it's not scheduled, I mean, I guess then you just show up and it's full, then you just either wait or leave. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No,
I lost
okay.
my question, so.
No, I can elaborate a little bit more. I know that one of our developers is in the back there, so she can speak more on it, but it's an opportunity to go online and see who's playing at what times and then to meet up. And so it's just kind of a free app app that you can use to see who's playing. And then you can go and meet, and if your friends are there, and just sign up or even schedule drills and lessons. And so.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah. And also, we just want to comment on the Pickleplex. We're asking for free access to community courts. Not asking for families to drive and to go and go to pay for these courts. Pickleball or chicken pickle, it's about $20 an hour on the not non-busy times, and the busy times is $40 an hour. So, asking us to go pay a fee and drive a distance wherever that is, I don't think that's fair. So we're just asking for just 2 courts, and we're willing. And for us, this is what we've always done. We've gone every single day to play these courts. I mean, we're asking for a full season. I mean, there's rain and we'll still go out there. So I think that's just something that, because there's no lights, it's just limited time to play. So a lot of us do work these schedules 8 to 5, and we're asking for extended hours to play as much as we can. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Susie Turnus.
Hello, good evening. I'm Susie Turnus. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you, and I'm very impressed. I've been to lots of meetings like this, and you guys have taken a really good, hard look at this and asked some really tough and insightful questions. So I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness with this. I will not go on about how much I love pickleball. I am not the best at it, but it is super fun. And obviously, it's very addictive. All of these people in this room, I guarantee, would be playing pickleball right now if it weren't for this meeting, because they're all as addicted as I am. And what they want is extended hours into the evening so they can keep playing what they love to do. But what I wanted to speak to specifically today is talking about converting these 2 lighted tennis courts to pickleball courts, but more specifically regarding the lines, the dual purpose lines. And you've heard some of the things before already about, can we use the lines? Can they use the lines? What happens? Well, first, it is confusing for both sports. But the other issue that we haven't mentioned yet is, what do you do about the nets? So temporary pickleball nets. Well, who handles those? If you leave them out there on the court, the next day they will be gone. So like at Riverside in the bubble, that's a managed facility, and there are temporary nets that are taken down and set up, but there's someone there to do that work and to manage it. So the whole thing about temporary nets for pickleball on those courts is really not feasible. Besides the fact that it's windy, they blow over, you have to get sandbags and put them up. It's not feasible to have both sports use that. And then we talked about how USTA prohibits the use of tennis courts, but that doesn't apply to the school's use. So that's really what I wanted to talk about, was about just the dual use is not a good solution at this time. It's no small feat to raise the kind of money that Becky has been able to raise. Those are donations and funds from individuals. That is a lot of money of people who are passionate about doing this. So the pickleball, the money's there, the people are there, the data is there. Now we hope there will soon be lights there. Thank you.
And our final speaker tonight, Riley Turnus.
My name is Riley Turnus. I am 12 years old. I started playing pickleball 3 years ago. After school, too hot to play. I have trouble getting a ride because parents work. And after school, it's just too hot. Before school, I can't go. I just don't have a ride. I can't get to pickleball and then to school. And then if I wait for a ride and I go later, I don't have lights to play. So I just think we could use some lights, and me and other young pickleball players could, grow as a community and begin just getting a better sense of community.
All right, does anybody have any questions for our speaker?
I do. Do a lot of your friends play pickleball?
Yes. We do play it in PE. It's like a little game.
Oh, you play it at school?
Yes. But this year is the first year of school sports. So they have football, tennis, and they have basketball, but they don't have pickleball yet. Pickleball is probably, as you know, the fastest growing sport in America. So
I've heard.
Yeah.
Some mic drop there from Mr. Turnus. All right, well, I am speechless. Thank you so much, everybody, for speaking tonight. I'm going to bring discussion back to the bench and open it up to board member questions, comments, deliberations. What do we think?
Well, this discussion is more than just the two-tier communities. We also have to think about our staff. For those who don't know, our staff's very small for the size of the city we are. And then we're also having to look at how we space out amenities because our staff is small. So although we try to make sure that every area of the city is covered with everything, it's not always possible because of the size of the staff. So that also has to be taken into consideration as well. So.
You bring up a really good point, Commissioner, and I will actually ask Reggie if you have any comments, anything in particular on what you've heard tonight, or anything that I probably should have asked before if we need to have for an introduction of tonight. Is there anything that you'd like to say in response, just as a member and a leader of the staff here?
Sure. Just clarification on a couple of things as well. I know it was mentioned earlier about whether tournaments can be played with the pickleball lines on it. USTA sanctions events prefer that the lines not be on there. The courts aren't usable for us to hold some of the bigger tennis tournaments that we may have. So that does factor into it if we were to use those courts for anything like that. We don't currently have them at Riverside for that reason, so that we can have some of those tournaments there. The concern of being able to have the staffing there to be able to move the temporary courts for the nets is definitely a concern for us. We don't have staff that can manage that, and being able to do that to meet the need that we have for that area. So those are two things that are legitimate concerns that need to take in consideration once you're making a decision as well.
This is something that this is not germane to the vote, but I just was thinking are we at the point as the sport being growing at the rate it is and the city being the size it is it time to address that, the discussion about a pickleball director? If we're talking about planning for the future, and I'm quite frankly, I love the enthusiasm. I love that everybody is engaged in finding lifetime friends, but the fact of the matter is we're talking about economic development opportunities for the city. And are we going to be building an infrastructure that is ready to capitalize on the change of culture? And I mean, that's really just where and again, I don't know if you'd like to comment on it, but I just know in the future, I think this is a discussion that we just need to continue because, I mean, this really is not a part of a strategic plan of pickleball. This is like, okay, we have a group who's come here and said that this is a solution that we need. I think there might be space to talk about a longer term strategy with regard to all of our activities like this.
Sure. And we have taken a step in that direction, and I think Becky referenced that earlier, that we did bring a contractor on board that is managing some of our pickleball expansion with doing league play and expanding the sport itself. So with the additions that we did at the tennis center, we do have that in place, and you'll see in the numbers there that you have that we provided, it shows how that growth relates to that as well with having that person on board to help manage that.
And I don't think we have a way to share this with everybody. Are there any points that we just necessarily wanted to go over, these financials that we see? What he's referencing is this document that shows the revenue at the Riverside Tennis Center between tennis, league play, drills, pickleball leagues, pickleball drills, and tournaments, et cetera, just showing the change over time in revenue. So, anyhow, I said my piece on that. Does anybody have any further discussion on that particular piece or any other questions?
I've got a question for Reggie. Reggie, over the last, few years that you've been with us at the city, how have you seen the programming in the recreations department change or incorporate pickleball more? I know you do a lot of work to bring innovative experiences for our youth in the parks. And so have you seen a big change with pickleball programming in different parks? And what would it mean to have additional courts at Edgemoor for recreation department?
And we have seen quite a bit of growth, and that's true what we've gotten from the community that's here, that's represented. And some of the things that we've done to try to accommodate for that we've started incorporating pickleball courts in our gym at our rec centers. So I believe majority of them, if not all of them, have pickleball lines that are in there with designated time. They can actually play indoors. So when the weather does get cold and the courts outside aren't usable. With the expansion of the tennis center, we did add additional courts on there because of the need that we have there. So that's something that's growing for us as well. And just on, want to deliver the message from our Mr. Hauptman from the option that we provided you guys there with the data that shows, where the increasing numbers are, or since 2019 to 2022, data does support that there's a need for additional courts. And,
what happened in 21 with tennis?
And 21 in tennis, specifically what you're referring to?
There's from 20 to 21, there's a significant increase, and then from 21, I'm just looking at the revenue, and then from 21 to 22, there's a significant decrease. So I was just kind of curious, do we have any idea, or am I just not seeing something right? What would have caused?
And which particular ones are you referring to, from one season to the next, or?
Yeah, I'm looking at the revenue for tennis between 20, 21, and 22, like this little.
Had a massive jump, it looks like, in
and then it just fell back off again.
Yeah, I don't know what but the lessons look like they took a $22,000 jump between 20 and 21, and then it fell off about $13,000 after that in 22.
So part of that is this is not through the end of the year, so some of that is seasonal as well. And in 2020 was during the time frame with COVID, so the tennis center was closed for a part of that. We also had the construction that took place, and that impacted some of that also. So we didn't have usage of some of those courts when those renovations were being made. So that's where you'll see some of those trends that are there also.
Thank you. It's not necessarily a decision swayer, but I was just kind of curious because. So I guess I would just kind of share some of my thoughts and I don't really know how to go about all this. So,
Please.
It is crystal clear that pickleball courts need to be under lights. And at first, when I sat down and I was looking at this, I was like, well, this option's no because of X, Y, Z. And as we've had a few people, so then I went to, we need to just think about relocating the school. And then they came up, and like I said, I've got 5 nieces and nephews, so them getting on Kellogg and 135, like, that is not exciting for me. But with them being on Kellogg, their school, they're probably already driving on Kellogg as it is. So then I was kind of, well, what about doing both? Okay, so it worked for the school. They could still do what they needed to do. Granted, I'm glad that you elaborated a little bit farther past that although it does work for the school, tournaments past that, necessarily wouldn't. And then someone brought up a point about the storage, and this is how, I guess, dense I am. I know that they both require nets, but I didn't realize they were different. I mean, I guess it makes sense that the tennis net, I think, is lower. So I didn't even really think about if we do a dual court, that would mean swapping of the nets. Okay, storage, where are we going to put them? What happens if it gets destroyed? Like that, there's a lot more to that. And like you said, having the staff to go out there and switch, and how often are they going to switch? And because then I was like, well, the kids only need the courts from 3:45 to 5:15. I've heard someone mention, well, I get off, I'm 8 to 5 and I want to play when I get off. Well, the school's basically done at that point. And so that kind of made more sense for doing a dual. However, with the tournaments being an issue and then having the courts, not having storage for the nets and having someone to put them up and take them down, I mean, that's definitely a concern because we don't have the staff for what we already have in place, and trying to add on to that, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if we keep adding on. I will ask a question. I think it was mentioned earlier. I don't know if it was actually said. That money that was raised, the $25,000 for this project, is that money only used if we convert those 2 courts to pickleball, or would it be used, this is all just me in theory, or could that money be used towards, like, if we painted the lines or something like that? Not to say that that's the case, just I'm thinking, I'm rolling. So, like, would it be, they can only use, whoops, sorry, go ahead.
Why don't you come forward, Becky?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your good questions. You're thorough. The $27,000 that we've raised is specifically for a project called Light Up Edgemoor. It's a fundraiser that we've had for 5 years now, and we can't really use that money for anything else because we took that money from people with the intention of lighting up Edgemoor. Over the last year, since we had the last decision on this issue, we've worked diligently to try to come up with solutions for lighting up Edgemoor besides getting 2 more courts. It's out of our ballpark. It's $130,000 to meet the specifications that the city requires for lighting on the existing pickleball courts. It's less than $50,000 to take 2 more courts and put pickleball courts under the lights. It's the most economical, sensible thing there is to do. When I left here 2 weeks ago, I was asked to come up with options for the classical school, and I'm going to go back to that issue right now. I've talked with Troy Houtman, and he recommends that they be offered McAdams, Those courts are in better condition than the Edgemoor courts are. The Edgemoor courts are crumbling into the ground, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it.
So, not to be confrontational, but does that not hinder your play as well?
No, we resurface the courts when we do pickleball courts.
Oh,
They'll be resurfaced.
okay.
That's where the money gets spent, to resurface courts and to improve our parks. And then the other option, first, they pay $1,200 a year to rent those courts at Edgemoor. And that's probably about a third of what the actual value is, but they're getting quite a deal. And the other option would be to move to Riverside, the premier tennis facility in this town. That's why $1.5 million was spent for people with tennis programs to use that facility to support the income at Riverside and to also enhance their own programs, being at the premier facility in Wichita. There's their answer. Yeah, it's a couple minutes more to get there.
I was going to ask you, I knew you probably knew, how much farther is it to Riverside versus Edgemoor?
Well, let's see.
I can look at
It's,
I can tell
when
you.
I drove it, it was 4 to 6 minutes from Classical to Edgemoor.
5.9 miles. I looked.
Yeah, it's no more than 10 minutes. If you go on Kellogg, it's quicker. If you take Woodlawn to Central, it's a few minutes more. But it's under 15 minutes to the premier facility in the city.
And are they not? Is Riverside not being used at those times? From the 3:45 to 5:15, is that available?
I don't know if it's available or not, but Troy Houtman seems to think they could work that out and give them a deal as well.
Reggie, do you know, would you be able to answer that, Reggie?
That time frame is one of our premier time frames that we're actually looking for court rentals, but we do work with other organizations as well that use on-site that we schedule and have time for them to use it, so and work around that. So there are some options.
So that could be an option.
It could be an option.
Perfect. Thank you.
And just so that I understand as well, the McAdams courts are also open at that time. And if I'm understanding, we're scheduling those, or those are in the CIP to get resurfaced. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that was one of the options, and that was the message that Mr. Houtman wanted to relay as well, is that if we went with the option of putting the courts there under the lights and move over to McAdams, there will be courts that are available there during that time frame. We do have our McAdams Tennis Association that use that space during the summer and during the evening time frame, but that time frame that they're requesting should not conflict with that. And I think Alex is here from that organization as well and may be able to speak on that also.
McAdams is a fabulous facility. I was impressed. I haven't been down there for years. I played pickleball for 8 years. I was a tennis player before, played at McAdams before. Fabulous facility. The courts are in fantastic condition.
And that is an area that we're looking at to make some improvements. There are some concerns with some of those courts there, but they are in better shape than a lot of the other courts that we have around the city. But we are looking at potentially putting some dollars there for CIP in 2023.
There are options for the classical school. Viable, attractive options, desirable options.
I appreciate you answering that question.
You're welcome.
And I wouldn't want you to use it if you like you said, raise the money for the lighting. I wouldn't want you to use it for anything else.
Can't.
But I was just curious because I wanted to make sure I understood, is it only this option that it works? And now that I understand, I appreciate that.
We've explored every option.
And if I can add to it too, the Parks Foundation has agreed to match, to make up the difference to make that $40,000 to be able to resurface those courts and light up Edgemoor.
Yeah, we have a lot of support with the city already.
Any other questions for our speaker? Going to bring it back to, thank you very much, Becky.
You're welcome.
You may come back, who knows? Anyhow, other questions, other comments from fellow Members of the Board of Park Commissioners.
A comment that I'll add is, this year, this time around, I believe we got, there was a lot more support that came in from the pickleball community. Last year when we had this conversation, I believe we received 90 emails from tennis community and a handful from the pickleball community. And I think, this year it's been flipped around. Yeah, this year we've received, and if I remember correctly, that was one of the hangups was, would there be enough support to support those pickleball courts being converted? And so I applauded the pickleball community and the tennis community both for being so active and organized and being engaged in these conversations.
I did just want to say one little last thing. That someone mentioned earlier about having to, people keep mentioning the Pickleplex, and keep in mind that is still 2 years away. It's very clear that pickleball is growing and developing way beyond, I think, probably, and anyone probably could have imagined, at least as quickly as it is. But the information about chicken and pickle, because I think that's how a lot of people have been exposed to it, is going to Chicken and Pickle and seeing the game and playing and getting involved and stuff like that. But noting that you do have to pay for that, depending on the Pickleplex and how all that's going to go forward, those are things that it sounds like you would have to pay for as well. So we need to also make sure that people have options. Tennis has several free options, and so it's not necessarily, wouldn't be the right thing to, another sport you have to pay. That was just a random thought that I had.
The thought that came to mind with me, and again, I find myself thinking that very much appreciate the dedication that everybody is bringing, especially the folks who may not have the majority opinion in the room. Everybody is here showing that they sincerely care about this kind of activity, getting involved with kids, getting involved with making the culture of this community more active and more social, and growing that integration between all of our communities is incredibly important. As we move forward, I think the model that's been set by the pickleball community has been incredibly impressive. This fundraising effort, right there says a lot about how much skin you're going to put in the game. And I would welcome that kind of solution, that kind of seeking of solutions. I invite the tennis community. I want to be a partner in that. If I am positive there are grants out there, I'm positive there are folks who'd be interested in helping to support the tennis community. And if we are not meeting the needs of what the tennis community needs and what our schools need, we need to have that conversation. And I want to personally commit that no matter what the vote is tonight, I commit myself, because this is very important, that we continue the level of services for everybody who would like to spend their time on Wichita Park assets. So thank you for making your voice heard on this. So we've got a question before us, and I wanted to ask, what the actual language, I don't know, what the language of a motion would be, because we've been going back and forth on this last time, did not feel like we had appropriate answers. So where does that stand? What is the question before us in a motion?
Well, the question for the park board is whether to authorize the construction of the pickleball courts in lieu of the tennis courts, or if you want to take one of the other options, you can kind of frame a motion around that way, and I'm happy to frame it that way as well. That's just kind of the key top line one. But that sort of motion and second will be our next move.
Well, since this lies in District 1, I would leave that up to our Commissioner Cabral to make a motion.
Yeah, I would motion that we convert 2 tennis courts under the lights at Edgemoor to 6 pickleball courts.
Seconded by By you, excuse me.
By
I will-
me.
I will let you
I
take
don't
that.
have
So
a
the
name today.
motion has been made and seconded. So we will open the roll, and I guess, I don't know if we have any way to count. We'll just go down the line and cast your vote. Let's go down. District 6.
Chris, do we need to open it up for comments?
Oh, excuse me, yes, we will open for comments, excuse me, from our board members, excuse me. Please, do we have
No, I
comment?
just didn't know if Tom or Phil had any thoughts.
No.
Excuse me, yes, of course, pardon me.
The only question I would still have, and it's a historical one, we're reversing a decision was made last year because of popular opinion, because more people came out this year than last year. How often does something like that happen, that a new board comes on and reverses a decision made?
I can't say that I can speak specifically for how often does this happen, but I know that once we have a request, we try to gather the data so that you can make an informed decision based off what the information we gave you.
But I'll say to you, Tom, last year I don't think we put as much information into it, and I'll be honest about that. We didn't really explore it as much. I mean, we're only 2 from the last board, so I don't think we really explored it into the depth that we have this time around.
No, we didn't. We certainly didn't have the different options that were presented to us, and didn't see the numbers that we're looking at this year. The other thing I'll add too is that this isn't an easy decision. I mean, either way, somebody's not getting what they want, but I hope that the community understands that, this is an investment that we believe is being made into our park system. And I can't speak for the whole board, but I serve on this board to enhance the parks because I believe in parks, and I believe in community. And if we can invest in those things and create spaces where people can gather together, that's all we can do, right? Is create those atmospheres for our community to continue to grow and thrive. And I do really applaud the pickleball community because raising $27,000 is not an easy feat. And doing it with, the small facility that you had access to is something to applaud. But this isn't just a conversion of courts, it's also the investment of $40,000 into our parks department. And I don't know how often we get $40,000 checks to improve some of our spaces.
Do we have any other board member comments? All right, then let's just go down district by district. District 1, how do you vote?
Yay.
That's 1 for yay. District 2 is absent. District 3.
Yay.
District 4. District 5 is absent. District 6. And as the at-large position, I will vote in the affirmative. The measure is passed. Again, want to thank everyone very much for being here. Really do appreciate the spirited discussions on both sides of this, and sincerely hope that we can continue these conversations moving forward. Please, if you have thoughts on any of these issues, feel free to contact us through our email and phone. You can find on wichita.gov, search for the Park Board. You can reach out to us. But until then, our next Park Board meeting will be September. We have off the second Monday in September. We'll see you for our next meeting.
We do need to move to adjourn.
I'm sorry?
We do need to move to adjourn.
And so, yes, and right now, I will get right to
Okay,
it.
yeah,
I will go ahead and make the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We're adjourned.